in today's episode.
I have my show. It's called Fraud Boxer. We as fraud fighters, all these people on Telegram are having coordinated groups. When I go out drinking, go to the bars or go on trips, on vacations and stuff, and it comes up what I do, I can go on for hours and hours and hours about what I do. I wanted to be a cartoonist. I am a social person. I think everybody's very aware of that in this industry. I'm very loud. I like to be the center of attention. So I'm always happy to bring more people into that center. I think the hardest thing for a lot of people is just the lack of confidence going into those scenarios that you're not going to be perfect. So it was kind of like a fraudulent transaction, but use my money and get it shipped to me, and it worked. And a lot of companies max out individual contributors at a certain level. So the only way for them to get to the money they want or the seniority title that they want is to move to a management track. But they don't want to be a people manager. Never do we're doing it this way because I'm the boss. Never pull that card. And if you don't care, they don't care. Sorry, I'm totally hijacking your show here.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the new episode of the podcast, A Journey into Fraud Prevention. I'm your host Ivan, and in this episode I'm joined by Jordan Harris, who is Senior Director of Fraud Prevention at iHerb and founder of Fraud Boxer podcast. You can find a link to his podcast in the description of this episode. Let's begin. Поехали. Hi Jordan.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great.
Thank you for joining me today. And this is pretty rare case because I would say, competitors where we focus on.
Yeah. I think your show, which I think is really cool actually, is getting people's their journey, how they got into fraud fighting. I think it's always different for people, how they got into it. And I like to know about it. Of course, on my show, I do ask people about their history and their beginning, but not in the way that you're doing it. So I think that you're doing it in a unique way. And we always welcome, well, at least I do. I always welcome more shows in our space because, it's entertainment. We need to be entertained. We have jobs, and these sorts of things break up our day. So welcome to our industry's podcast team. Yeah.
Well, thank you for great words. Yeah, and I'm usually started from questions that some people found very difficult. Some of them not, but fraud prevention. What actually fraud prevention for you?
For me, that is an interesting question. I think for a lot of people, fraud prevention is the act of stopping mostly credit card fraud from bad actors obtaining credit card fraud and using credit card fraud against their website. For me, I think the word is a little more encompassing. Of course, it does have the fundamentals of credit card fraud exist, and our job is to stop it. But there are other places where people could take advantage. And we see that a lot right now in abuse and manipulation. I think that we get a lot of bleed over into cybersecurity now too. So I think for me, it's anytime anybody's trying to do anything malicious against my website for monetary gain. That's what fraud prevention means to me.
I'm usually the person who against to try to say the cybersecurity fraud is the same thing. I usually try to convince people to say, don't put these two different phrases in the same basket, because I know a lot of companies who say, oh, we hire you, you're going to looking for cybersecurity, for the fraud. And I always say, please stop, guys. This is fraud prevention. It's a bit different. Cyber is more about technology and how the people try to manipulate technology. But I don't know, you might disagree or agree with me.
So I think they are separate but similar. So I think if you look at cybersecurity and you boil it down to what its primary function is, it's protecting the business itself from malicious actors. And that is not monetary gain necessarily. That is trying to do bad things to the code, trying to steal secrets, trying to take advantage of user sessions to get inside of a business to then do sorts of actions. Whether those actions are monetized or not is usually up to the cybersecurity. A lot of times you'll see ransomware attacks happening there. But I think increasingly you're seeing intellectual property be taken on the cybersecurity. So you see cybersecurity plays more in trying to protect against those accounts or those attacks, protect user accounts internally, and then also doing things like bot mitigation. Now, that's where I think our tools kind of collide a little bit, is we as fraud fighters, that's a very controversial term right now, given a startup is trying to trademark that. But us as fraud fighters are trying to stop people from using bots and doing bot and scripting behavior against our site in order to probably get through the purchase funnel faster. But on the cybersecurity side, they're also trying to prevent those same bots from doing too much traffic load on the site, doing DDoS attacks, or executing malicious code against sites, man in the middle attacks, those sorts of things. So I think there is a little bit of crossover into those. And I think that you definitely need to be having those conversations and be sitting near your cybersecurity team, but they are very different things at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree with you. The most important, I would say, TLDR from our last couple of minutes conversation. You need to work with like cybersecurity. You don't need to say, I don't care what this guy's doing. You really need to know what they focus on, what the troubles they have, because it's a lot of correlation happens.
Yeah, and sometimes they have some really cool tools that you can use too.
For
So
sure.
have those
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah, for sure.
And you can
100%.
push stuff into their budget, and that's super helpful sometimes.
Oh, that's cool. You already touched on something about management. We're going to speak about this later on. But how long have you been in like fraud fighters industry?
I've been full time only doing fraud fighting since probably early 2011, but I started to dip my toe into it in around 2000, like late 2010, when I started kind of just playing in areas, seeing card testing, seeing those sorts of things. I maybe even a little bit before because I have my own skateboard company back in like late 2009 and into 2010 that, of course we had to scrutinize transactions to make sure it was a legitimate person, making sure like, I don't think people in mainland Africa were trying to order skateboards from Portland, Oregon and have them shipped over there. So, I guess you could say it goes back even a little further. So about 14 years, almost 15 years probably.
Oh, that's huge. And how it's like changed so far and where it's going. I know like it's changed a
Oh
lot.
yeah.
We at least had the COVID. That's changed a lot of the games, but in general,
Yeah, I mean, it's the evolution has been mostly on the technology side, I think. Before it was when I started, it was very rules based, and we were just getting technology that could do sorts of profiling about devices, which I think was a huge game changer because a lot of times, like we would look at like it was like early behavior, so it wasn't necessarily behavior like we know it now, but it was like what are these people doing? So they're using an IP that's from far away, using a different address with a different name on a credit card, and they're trying to buy really too much stuff. And that was like a behavior that wasn't normal for what we would see on our sites. So we would create these rules that would try and like funnel people into these binary yes no decisions. For the most part, even if you put manual review, like you're still making a decision at the end of the day. The end result was always a binary yes or no decision. Whether you manually reviewed it or not was up to you. But as we got more into technology, we were able to kind of fuzzy up the rules a little bit. So like think of it like we had more intelligence about the session. So instead of just a person using an IP from far away, trying to buy $10,000 worth of stuff when your ATV is normally $60, we could see, oh, but it is, a educational IP address working at a school that has to be funneled through a central server farm, but they're shipping it to a school. The credit card's address is near that school, so they're probably buying like a bunch of stuff for an educational facility. So we had a little more intelligence on how we could do that. So we could break up the pieces of the transaction into scores and score the important pieces of the transaction that was important or not as important. So stuff that like mattered, like that proxy or that IP from being far away matters a little more than like where the stuff's going, maybe for an example, or what they're buying. So you could do a lot more intelligence around that. But then as we got to be, I'm sorry, I'm totally hijacking your show here, but as we got more technology, it got to be more difficult. So our rule sets got to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rules long. And then those rules started colliding. So then the next big wave, after like these device intelligence tools was machine learning. So then now we can take all these attributes and have a computer do all the decisions for us using like the truth data. So you get a chargeback, it automatically goes into the model. The model looks at all of these attributes that are important and makes a determination there. And I think that we've now taken that a step further where we still use the machine learning piece of these tools with all this device attributes. We don't necessarily write rules like we used to, but now we've added this behavioral layer. That's a different type of behavioral layer to that, where it's more, what are the actions? What are the speeds? What are the, like, is it normal to other session behavior from this exact user? Or is it drastically changed outside of just IP, how they're holding their phone, how many apps are on the phone, their actual interaction, like their walking gait, like those sorts of things are now factored into these decisions, which is come a long way. And whether that is too much or too little is always up for debate. But for me, I think these things in an ever increasing world is more important, because I'm going to say one more thing about it. What's also changed is it used to be a single group attacking a single website. So it was a lot easier to write these rules and find these individuals and stop these individuals, when now it's all these people on Telegram are having coordinated groups, multiple groups attacking a single website, and they're always poking and prodding a little bit and changing a little bit more. So your tools need to evolve quicker and more organically than ever before. When it used to be, once you shut them down, you shut them down. Now it's like, I hate using the term whack-a-mole, but it is literally what we're doing constantly, but using technology to do it and in an ever evolving pattern.
Yeah, and I don't know, before, I don't 10 years ago, everyone's so exciting to say dark web, dark web.
Oh yeah.
Everything you can fight about dark web and some people in the dark web. And nowadays, you just open Telegram, just search anything and you can find it without any problem. People stop to fight it. They actually create the great businesses. And I have plenty of stories when these solutions at Telegram works better rather than actual business. And some stories when someone actually bought these kind of solutions from people.
Oh,
It was like quite interesting story back when I worked in a taxi
maybe you come
company.
on my show and we talk about that. How about that?
For sure, anytime. Yeah, and the new vector is also like AI. This is like two words that's everyone crazy right now. I believe if you want to inspire people, just say AI, and people
Yep.
already start listening.
That's funny. Like I was just in Singapore with the MRC, doing a session with a new startup that does some cool AI stuff, edge processing called Darwinium, and AI was like literally every session had the word AI in it at some point there, and then it was fitting that I was doing a session with Darwinium on AI attacking AI and how to train your new systems AI using AI. So just so much AI, you know.
Yeah, I hope next abbreviation gonna be easier. Yeah, next one after AI, maybe we just like cut it for one letter, like F, like this fraud
Yeah,
related, or
yeah.
something like that.
F's in chat, everybody, for fraudsters.
Yeah, gonna be easier. You mentioned you joined fraud after you had successful
Yeah.
business to sell skates. And why decide to join like fraud fighters? What was like story? Someone just push you or?
Yeah, no. I kind of forced my way into the industry. Like I was coming back to Los Angeles to live again, and I had been working in customer service roles at large companies like Netflix, T-Mobile, and Apple for a while. And I I know that I like the office environment. I like the air conditioning. So I was trying to find a job, and then I actually had found through Craigslist a company called Fandango, which is a very large movie ticket website here in the U.S. I guess I think they even do some stuff in Brazil, but I haven't. It's been a little while since I've been there. But they had a customer service job open, and I had applied for that. And I went in for the interview and was telling the story about how some card testing that we had seen at Netflix and some of the stuff that we had done about that. And they had mentioned that they had this very same thing happening. So I said I could solve it, and then they hired me to go do that job. And through the process of learning the new systems that they had there and the software that they had purchased to do that, I really fell in love with the chase. I think that that's always, I think a lot of people, when they get that first rush in fraud fighting, that's where they really get addicted. Like you either get addicted or it's a job to you. And I think of those people that it's just a job to them, it doesn't really, like they're not going to be around for very long. But the people that get the passion and the addiction to it, it's you're always chasing and you're always evolving. And I think I'm one of those people that even like when I go out drinking, go to the bars or go like on trips on vacations and stuff, and it comes up what I do, I can go on for hours and hours and hours about what I do. And I've never, like, I've had a number of different jobs that I enjoy before. Like, I was a buyer for a chain of retail stores. I have my skateboard company. I've enjoyed the things that I've done, and I've had a very fortunate life to be able to do that. I've also had to rebuild my life 4 different times. But with fraud fighting specifically, it is the one thing that is like exciting and fun to me, even after all this time. And I don't see an end to that happening. It's the most passionate thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, you mentioned that when you somewhere on vacation and someone it's come up that you're working in fraud. What's the common question you got? Like how to break system, how to pay mortgage? Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, most people don't want to ask about how to perpetrate fraud. I mean, it does come up. I think most people are just shocked to understand that like the position even exists and that people even do this for work. And I think when I do my best, like obviously having my own show, being able to explain things in a manner that people can understand, like that aren't necessarily in our industry or adjacent to our industry or newer in our industry is kind of what I need to be able to do with my life. So breaking it down to people that completely are outside of our industry into ways that they can understand, I think it blows a lot of people's minds, like what their transaction goes through in order to, because to them, they just bought something online, it's done, it's shipping, but they don't understand like all the back end work that goes into it. Not even payment processing, but just like the scrutinization that goes into that individual transaction that determines if they're a yes no person. And I think when you explain it right to people, it gives them a lot of comfort, understanding that happens, that exists, and that they're being safe and they're being protected.
Yeah, when you start to share some technology, like backend about how some system works, some people who complain in the beginning to say, "Oh, my car was declined. I believe it's like someone don't like me. It's like conspiracy theory
Yeah,
inside."
always. It's
Yes,
the website working against them. I'm trying to give them money. Why won't they let them give me money? I mean, I've been guilty of that, but at the same time, I do understand what happens on the back end, so I understand when it's breaking and something's wrong.
yeah. I just want to say, if someone from the PlayStation listen me, I have a huge complaint to them that for some reasons I can't
Oh,
use my card. Like
you charged
when
back,
I
didn't you? You charged back that purchase of Cyberpunk 2077, didn't you?
No, I am just a
Oh,
person who just tried to using the card from different country for the
mm.
account that's related for another country, and always like struggle to understand. Like it's 2023, guys. What's going on? Please, just someone listen
I
me.
mean, they do have separate stores. Like I will say, like Sam's probably gonna like jump through the screen at us, but they do have different stores that are region based. Like you can't buy a game on a console in Europe and then have it work necessarily in the US on like a US based console. So consoles are there's regions to them, and that's comes down to licensing. So I won't pretend to answer that for the PlayStation guys, but I will say it's probably not payments related. It's probably mostly licensing related for the titles and the actual hardware console itself. So, but we can get somebody over there will probably jump in the
Yeah,
comments on here,
for
most
sure.
likely.
Yeah, I will find someone because I have like this complaint to ask exactly someone who work in the PlayStation. And since we know your story already, and what your was dream position when you was a child?
Oh man, dream position. I wanted to be a cartoonist. I wanted to draw. I wanted to write cartoons. I want like not comics, but like Garfield style comics. I know people
Okay.
have like Garfield and is polarizing for people because he could be kind of boring, but I was obsessed with Garfield as a kid. And then Far Side, I wanted to try and write like comics like that, like 3 panel, 1 panel sorts of stuff that just made people like chuckle, like the like that's kind of what I wanted to do. Now Far Side is hilarious. And I'm actually that's like one of the few groups that I even follow on Facebook. It's just a group that just posts Far Side comics, and I love it. I love it all the time. But that's what I wanted to do. Like nothing with computers, nothing with technology. I was fortunate to get exposed to computers a little earlier than a lot of people were. Not because it's just like how the world worked. Like I found a computer at the school, and then I had one at home that like my grandma got me when nobody had them, and then I played with it a little more. So, but not like I never wanted to do like coding or any of that. I wanted to create. I've always wanted to create, and that's why it's kind of fitting now that I have a podcast.
So I believe your next project gonna be like some comics about fraud fighters.
I mean, possibly. I know there's a couple people doing some of those things already, but maybe I could be a guest writer or a guest artist on there. We'll see.
I hope it happens. And back to reality of fraud. What's the hardest things to work in fraud industry?
The hardest things, I think what catches a lot of people that are newer to the industry off guard is not knowing where the next attack is going to be and how do you find it. Do you have to wait until there's a chargeback? Do you have to wait until somebody else tells you something, or do you have the ability to find it? I think that can scare a lot of people, but I think also understanding that like your perfection isn't the aim in this industry is comforting. Like you're never going to prevent all chargebacks. You're never going to not get frauded on your website. It's going to happen to you. At the level that it happens to you is really what your job is. Is your job is to answer that, mitigate it, and minimize it. And I think when you have that mentality that look, it's going to happen, but I'm going to be here and I'm going to be ready, and you know the tools and you know what you need to do, and you have that confidence, like you can really overcome that. But I think the hardest thing for a lot of people is just the lack of confidence going into those scenarios that like you're not going to be perfect, you're going to get frauded, it's going to suck, but you're going to answer it. And that's what I think a lot of people really need to understand.
But it's supposed to be happens. I mean, if it's no fraud, it's like really hard to upskill yourself, learn like or change the model. I mean, you're supposed to be allowed to keep something true, because if you start to prevent everything on the beginning, it's like no
You'll never
business
know.
still. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And the next question is my favorite, because I would looking forward to hear some insights for someone who in podcasting.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your podcast, like
Are
Fraud
you sure you want to
Boxer.
do this?
Yeah, I want. Yeah, I really want it. And
Yeah.
why you started this one? What it's about for someone who might not know about it?
Yeah, so I have my show. It's called Fraud Boxer, as you know. I've been around for about a year and a half now. Like, as I put an episode out this morning. We're recording this on a Friday with one of my old colleagues, Heath Taylor. He was a cybersecurity head for Live Nation. So I think that was my 35th episode out there. When I originally started my show, it's two pieces that happened kind of with that. I was having conversations like this with just people that would be like, "Hey, can we just jump on a call and sync?" And we would just talk fraud for a little while. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we recorded that and put it out? And there was another show that existed in our space, but I think there was a gap in that show that was like technical knowledge. That other show tends to kind of rehash like the same entry level fraud basic stuff again, which is fine. A lot of people are joining our industry every day, but the episodes can run a little long and they can lack a little bit of like technical prowess, which is fine. I'm not saying anything negative about it, but I wanted to be a little bit different, where I kind of jump in, get straight to the point, talk about a little more of the technical aspects, and have some different guests that are more widespread guests. Like some of the other shows tend to have like the same 3 or 4 guests over and over and over again. I wanted to have like a wider range of guests from different companies. Even that's where I think it's different, is like some people don't like to have solution providers on their show. I do, because, and I curate the solution providers closely. Like they're the ones that I'm interested in or I want to know more about. So people have a different idea of what some of these tools do, and maybe it'll trigger something in their brain. Kind of going back to our last question, is like they see these attacks coming in, and what do they do about them? Well, maybe they need a bot tool. Maybe they need an IDV. Maybe they need just an email verification tool, or maybe they need to do some passkey stuff like my Intersect episode. Like it's more stuff that interests me. It is a selfish play, because like these are conversations that I want to have with my guests that I just happen to share. And I will say it's been quite the journey, to say the least. And like you could probably ask me some more questions, but like I've learned a lot if to come out of that. If you want to say that.
Yeah, for sure. I just like first I want to start. What is your why still motivating to do it, like posted this one, still doing recording? Because it's like for yourself, you feel it like so good when you just like record and post it and just maybe listen once again yourself.
Mm-hmm. So some of the stuff, like let's talk about the podcast creation. So one of the things that I pride myself on, and it looks like you're doing it too, because you sent me a nice list of notes, is being organized. And I know some of the other shows aren't necessarily as organized. So I think the key to a good flow and a good episode is organization. And that starts with a good outline and notes and a collaboration. So I use Google. I have a Google Pro account for this podcast. And this podcast, like, creates an outline that we collaborate on, and we go back and forth. We put notes in this document, and then we try to do, sometimes, not always though, do a 30-minute sync maybe before, where we just like talk about it. And it makes my guests more comfortable, because I can jump on this mic and I can do this any day of the week. Actually, technically we're jumping on this and doing this because we both do this. And we can do this. But in that process of organization, it comforts my guest, calms them down a little bit about, there's a little bit of anxiety, especially for people that don't do this very often, about what to expect and how it'll look and how it'll feel. So then when it comes time, and it's all automated, I use another service to automatically send out links at their leisure. So they have full control, my guest, of when and how they want to record it. So they click on the link, they can change it if something comes up, and it automatically will update everything. And then we get onto we just jump on. And I think one of the things that I've learned, especially for me, is obviously the better the audio quality, the happier your listeners are. Now, I don't have microphones for everybody. I can't send out microphones. It's something that I've toyed with. I was like mailing a microphone to my guests before so they could set it all up. Not quite there yet, but I have some new lapel mics that are smaller that I might start doing that because they sound really, really, really good, and I can take them on the road. I do have a road kit as well that has extra microphones, extra cables, more all Shure. Like I use all Shure. I'm an all Shure all the time, except for the lapels. I love Shure microphones. I have 3 of them that travel with me. I have backup recorders and all of that. But the key is to try and get good audio and a good signal. So I do independent audio tracks, and then I cut them and edit them. Now, because of the prep that I do with my guests before, usually I don't have to do a lot of cuts, but I do a lot of cuts still to move things around, keep the flow going. I cut out some I cut out spaces. People do get lost in these documents that we are doing sometimes. And we will stop the conversation and say, do you want to try that again? Do we want to move on? And I cut those out and I make a pretty good flow. And I'm pretty good at editing. Like I just flew to Singapore, like I said earlier in this, and that's a very long flight. That is like, I think it was like 18 hours of total in-flight time, not counting the time on the ground in like Manila and at LAX and those sorts of things. But what I did is I had recorded a few episodes before I even got on that plane. So on my 18-hour leg, I was sitting there cutting and listening and making sure it sounds good. And I adjust the levels. I do de-essers, those sorts of things when necessary. I primarily use GarageBand on Mac to do the episode editing. However, if I need to, I will step up into Adobe Audition because they have some more dynamic tools. But I will say that Zoom, which I use to record, like I've said many times, is very, very, very good at noise cancellation and doing a lot of the heavy lifting on the audio quality. So I got to give them a lot of credit too, because they make me sound good. But also this Shure SM7B that I'm running through a Cloud Lifter and a Scarlett 212 makes me sound really good too. So does that answer any of your question in there?
Yeah, it is. I'm actually just like to prep to this conversation. I listened to your first podcast that's posted like back 2000.
Yeah, the Alexander Hall when I was using
Yeah.
a $50 mic.
Yeah, it is like completely different in the sounds, and I see how the people like when they start to something with bad sounds, it's like, okay, I don't want to listen to this one because
Yeah.
it broke my ear. And when you like record something good and you try to cut a lot of the like pause, everything, the people like start to more engage. I'm recently started to try to cut some phrases and put them in the beginning to kind of like motivate people to listen to this one. It's a difficult part because you need to find the exactly words that motivate people,
Yeah.
but sometimes it's this.
So I do that like when I do edit the commercials for that I post when I take an episode live. Like Heath, you know, today I have like a little 30-second clip that I posted with a waveform to LinkedIn. Now I will say when you're posting your episodes on LinkedIn, if you have video, it doesn't have to be like our faces like this right now, but if you have audio with something that moves, it gets people's more attention and you get a lot more interaction on that post. But same thing though, is I have to upload the entire episode into this program, and then I have to find that chunk that, you know, they're saying the right thing that grabs attention, you know, so those little quotes like that. And that could take me, it took me like an hour and a half last night. It took me longer to make that one waveform last night than it did to prep and record and edit the entire show. So I'm just thinking about that now, and that's kind of eye-opening.
Cool. I learned a lot. I mean, I'm still on really bad microphone. This is my thing to buy.
When you get the chance, I'll tell you right now, there is no substitute to the Shure SM7B, this microphone that I have right now. It is a $400 microphone, there's $5,000 microphones out there, but this is like the de facto standard for all podcasters. And you don't have to use phantom power, but you do. So it needs a power source to make it sound good. So what I do is I use this little blue box, and you can get them on Amazon. It's called a Cloud Lifter. Alexander Hall recommended it to me, but it adds 25 points of gain to the signal, which makes it so this thing sounds so good. And then I use the Focusrite Scarlett 212, which has phantom power. So it's just USB-Cs. I plug the microphone XLR cables into that, and then it runs to the Cloud Lifter, which then runs to this microphone. And then you run the 48-volt phantom power through here, and it sounds legendary. I think if you want the best of audio quality of all the episodes I've ever done, it's episode 7 with Sean Kelly from when he was at his time at SeatGeek. And he came completely prepared with like a similar kit, and it sounds phenomenal. Like we sound like we're sitting in the studio together. Now I have recorded people in the studio, like in live sessions at MRC last year. I did 2, and they sound pretty good too. But I mean, that's a controlled environment where I can do that. But for coming across the internet, where you never know what the person on the other side, that episode using these setups was impeccable. And so I recommend it. You're going to need like $1,000 cash, but drop the money and you will sound legendary forever.
Cool. Definitely follow this advice because I tried my first event record, and using AirPods, it was rubbish. The worst experience, AirPods. Yeah. However, when I started to Google a lot about what's the best microphone, I realized that the second best one that everyone suggests is like, you know, old one from the Apple that's using like to the with a 3.5. You just
Okay.
like connect it. It sounds like the best one. People a lot recommend it, and I saw some videos when people compare something like very expensive with this one.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty the same.
Shure made a little bit of a cheaper version of this SM7B. They call it the SV7. I have one of those too. That's the one I usually give to guests when we're sitting in person. I personally, it's got more tech on it than I really want to. Like it has like a little volume slider on it. But I got the special one that has, you could do a direct connection USB-C straight into your computer if you want to, or you can do XLR, which I'm a big XLR fan. Like I came from doing for hobby pro audio in the past. So I just know XLR super well and trust it. So I won't ever stop it. But there's a lot of options. I'll send you a whole list of like all the stuff that I use out there, and you can kind of make some determinations. You know, maybe if you start to monetize your show a little bit, you know, it makes the pill a little easier to swallow when you have to buy things like entire laptops and stuff, I will say. You
Yeah, for
know, it
sure.
is a
Yeah,
business.
it is. Yeah, and have you ever had the cases when someone just like reach out to you, say, "Thank you so much for this episode because I found new motivation to myself
All the time.
to just."
No, all the
I
time.
believe.
I am fortunate that I must strike a right chord with enough people, but I get people come up to me at shows, I'm at conferences, and I get people in emails and in LinkedIn messages that do say that they've gained a lot from some of the episodes. Especially more of the sales ones. I get salespeople that are like newer to the industry, and they say thank you for putting out the sales one that I put out last year before MRC. That they learned like a lot of the stuff that they were going to do that they were planning on doing doesn't work in this industry. But also people that like have not thought of technologies or having a specific problem that reach out. It's also super fun when people come up and take pictures with me at conferences. Like I am a social person. I think everybody's very aware of that in this industry. I'm very loud. I like to be the center of attention. So I'm always happy to bring more people into that center with my attention.
So good, so good. Yeah, and have you been victim of fraud because you're like in the industry for a long time?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think it's really hard to not, if you're a regular credit card user, to have some sort of scraping happen to you at some point. You know, we all have to use gas pumps, and that's like typically the one where I think a lot of people get their credit card compromised. I'm the person that pulls on them to see if it's going to have any sort of skimmer inside. I also do the tap to pay when available, but you know they've been doing the drill thing. My wonderful gas station that I normally go to decided they don't like Apple Pay, so they just disabled them because they're super smart. But I think I've had probably 2 or 3 instances where my card has been attempted. Usually it doesn't get through, but I'm a pretty safe person. Like I freeze my credit. I am very careful about where I transact. I try to use tokenized payment methods when possible. I never use my debit card. I'm all credit cards all the time, not only for the security, but also for mad points, bro. But I would say that since I got my debit card, I probably used it 3 total times. That's usually to pull cash out to buy lottery tickets when it's over $1 billion because, you know, I still would like to retire at some point, but nothing serious. I never had anything like a car stolen from me or been scammed out of like a PlayStation or anything like that.
Oh, you mentioned PlayStation once again. So right now I have a labeling here.
Yeah, actually, I finally got a PS5. You know, now they're available, but it was right before they became available, and I had been trying to do the lotto on Amazon. And Eamon Murphy, who my old roommate, he's over at Centrified now. He got a code, and he's like, "Do you want it?" And I had to like pretend I was him, so it was kind of like a fraudulent transaction, but use my money and get it shipped to me, and it worked. And then I finally have it, and then I just got Mirage. But what I really wanted to do is I want to play Starfield because I do like Bethesda. I do like Fallout's one of my favorite games. But it's only available on the new Xbox, and I already have an Xbox One X, the 4K one. I'm not gonna go, and I just got it a few years ago. I'm not gonna go buy a whole new Xbox. So it's no Starfield for me. It is what it is. Fine.
Yeah, a bit of a sad story, but yeah. I know you're mentoring the fraud team right now, and you kind of like have a long
Hmm.
experience in the manager position in fraud. What's your opinion about like what is necessary to jump from the core or like senior position, or let's say from individual
Yeah.
contributor to become a manager in fraud specifically?
Yeah. This is a good question. So there are 2 types of real people in this world. There are people that want to be ICs forever, and then there are people that want to lead and move them up and up and up. Now, ICs usually, individual contributors, usually do want to have momentum. Like they want the same momentum as the people that are jumping into the management track want. So I think it's important for people to understand the individual that's sitting in that chair and what their real dreams are. And a lot of companies max out individual contributors at a certain level. So the only way for them to get to like the money they want or the seniority title that they want is to move to a management tract, but they don't want to be a people manager. And some people aren't good people managers. I don't claim to be the best people manager, but I will say the people that get it, that understand me as a manager, and we can talk about that in a minute, typically understand what is needed of them and are successful in their careers later. And I don't get a lot of people that quit, but understanding the strengths and weaknesses of those persons. So somebody that's a really good fraud fighter, that's really good at identifying patterns, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be a good people manager. And I think that people need to realize that. I think the companies need to realize that too. So one of the things that I do is at this company, especially like it's been a little more useful because like how we do our levels allows this behavior. So it doesn't work at every company. But for me, if I have an individual contributor that's really, really, really good, but doesn't have the strength of personality to be a leader as far as people management goes, what we do is we move them up to a level that we as high as we can, and we keep going, we keep giving them momentum, but have them be kind of a knowledge base. So the newer entry level people or the lower levels below them can ping them for questions and say, well, should I do about this? But not for career advice, not for disciplinary actions, not for coaching. They're being used in a more knowledge category. So they're still an individual contributor. They don't have to have the responsibilities of being a people manager, but they still have enhanced responsibilities over a regular individual contributor. And that still gives them momentum. It still gives them goals. It lets them have growth, but without being in the management tract. Now, people in the management tract, they don't always have to be the best as far as knowledge goes. So that's where you could kind of have, like, you can bridge that gap there. Like me, specifically here at iHerb, I don't know everything there is to know about iHerb. I know a lot about iHerb, but I have people that are experts in iHerb. My job is to make sure that my people have the tools and have that knowledge to do what they need to do to get their jobs done. That's my job. My job is to make sure that the company has the right tools, that the overall goal of fraud prevention is being achieved, and that my people directly below me are equipped with the skills to do their job. And that doesn't mean that Jordan needs to know everything there is to know about iHerb. It doesn't mean that I need to know everything there is to know about Riskified or Threat Metrics. I know a lot about those tools because I've used them for so long, but I don't have to be the expert on them. They do. And with my people, like especially my people directly report to me, they are managers and a supervisor, and they have the personality to do that. Like they have those strong personalities. They can talk to anybody. We could be out at a bar or at a conference and they're chatting. They're not being quiet. I think for people to really excel at being a manager, a strong manager, not a weak manager, you need to have a little bit of like extrovert activity. Like introverts can be managers. I'm not saying that, but if you want to really be a strong leader, you need to have that personality where you can inspire confidence. Like your job is to make sure that these people have what they need to have and you're inspiring confidence. So they want to sit down at their desk and do their job. And they want to meet these goals of this company because you're a good leader, you're a strong leader, and you're empowering them to do their job. And you're inspiring, like I said, like you are inspiring. And that's what you need to be. And you can't be really inspiring if you're really quiet and you're just doing the bare minimum in order to be a people leader. Now, I will say, I have had people at companies that don't get it, and that's fine. People don't have to like me, and they don't have to like my goals. But at the end of the day, my goals at multiple companies have been successful for the companies. And that's all that matters. Like, and the vast majority of my people that do work for me do like working for me. And I appreciate that. But I've had people quit. I've had people quit and come back because it was more monetary. But I have people that have tried to battle me at every step of the way because they think that they know. They think that they understand. And it's how you deal with those types of personalities that really cuts you, like makes or breaks you as a leader. Like, do you fall victim into those? Do you get angry at them? Or do you understand what they're trying to do, what they really want to do, and give them tasks and give them guardrails that Yeah, they can be angry, but you're still giving them things to do. You're still showing them what they're supposed to be doing. And when they get upset and they come to you about things, you know how to calm them down. You listen. I think listening is an underrated skill in management, like especially with people that you don't get along with, that you have to manage or you have to work with every day, is you need to listen to their problems and you need to say, I understand you. I'm hearing you. This is, and explain yourself, transparency. This is why we're doing it this way. Never do we're doing it this way because I'm the boss. Never pull that card. If you have to pull that card, you've lost as a leader. I would just quit being a manager completely and just walk away. But even the people that you battle, you have to put yourself in their shoes and say, I understand where you're coming from. I hear you. I understand you want to do it this way, but this is why we have to do it this way. And I understand it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I've done this a long time. It will work out, or we have to do it this way because this is the way the company requires it to be done. This is the way the technology requires it to be done. I know you're going to be upset about it. I'm sorry that you're going to be upset about it, but we have to do it this way. So just try to do the best that you can to do it this way, and we'll deal with any sort of fallout. If you were right, I will be more than happy to say you were right. We'll figure it out, but it's an always evolving process. But you really have to be strong to the people that are strong against you. If you succumb to them and let them walk all over you, you will fail as a leader. You will not be seen as a strong leader across the rest of your organization. If you listen to the whispers of people trying to put sweet nothings in your ears and you react accordingly without talking to those other people, without having communication and being transparent, you will fail as a leader. You need to understand that everybody on your team has their own personal goals, whether that be career goals, whether that be personal goals. Everybody wants to be promoted and everybody wants your job. So people will self-sabotage you and they will try every single day to get into your seat. And you need to understand that, but you still need to respect them and give them some sort of framework to get them to where they want to be. But while understanding that there is a little difference between why you're in that seat currently and they're not. But I've been successful at it. Like I've had people that have battled me, like, and I see what has happened with like after I've left those organizations and what's happened with those folks and where they've gone. And I would have to say, like, I'm proud of the way that I handled the situation versus how it was handled after.
You know, you just like inspire me, scare me in a second, inspire me again, scare me in a second once again. And it's just like this roller coaster. It's really cool. I agree with a lot of the stuff. And I believe the most important to be a manager is like soft skills. If you want to be a
Mhm.
manager, please, you need to really focus on soft skills. The hard skills, they are important. In some instances, you need to know how it's work. You need to know maybe how to query data.
And yeah, you're not always going to be perfect. Like you're going to, like, people are going to complain. People are going to not like it. You're going to have good days. You're going to have people that'll like working for you one day and then they don't the next day. People have bad days. Humans are emotional. And I think in this modern workplace, emotions are now allowed. And we need to understand how to deal with people having emotions. And that's part of being a leader. And I've been proud of myself the way that I've handled it. I actually had my old friend Steve, he's since passed away. He did an episode of my show on emotional intelligence. And one of the things that he said was like, the human being is valued as much as the human doing. And I think that that's a super powerful statement that he said on my show. And anybody wants to go back and listen to that, I believe it's like episode 5 on there. It's, I, I miss him because he had really good information like that. And I'm super sad that he's gone because like he was a dear friend of mine outside of this industry. And he had so much more to give. And he was just starting to do these workshops for these managers on how to be a better leader for people. And he had so much more to share. And he was going to come back and do another show, mostly on storytelling. But it's just like when you find people that like know how to explain these things to you, it's very powerful. And I think emotional intelligence is something that everybody needs to really get books on and read about, especially if you're going to be a leader, because it's going to be important in the future. It already is now, and it's going to be in the future to be like a Mitch Hedberg thing.
I mean, this is really impressive. This intelligence things, it's really impressive because I know like emotions really hard, and specifically if you just like advice for some people who managing and maybe struggle with this one. If you ask person who have one-to-one, for example, ask how you feeling, and the person say I'm rubbish today. I can't do anything. Don't start this like hard
Yeah,
conversation. Like yeah,
switch your emotion. And like, I don't care, like everybody that does one-on-ones, if someone's having a bad day, like F whatever's on your agenda for your one-on-one, you can come back another day. If someone's having a bad day, talk to them about their day, talk to them about their problem, listen, be put your listening ears on, as they all say, and just be that for that day, because that's going to go miles further than being like, okay, so let's talk about your KPIs. Like, I'm sorry you're having a bad day. Let's talk about your KPIs. That leave your emotional baggage at the door doesn't exist in this 2023 workplace. I'm sorry. That's a very boomer thing. It's gone now. You're going to have to deal with emotions face on. So just put your listening ears on, roll up your sleeves, and start listening.
Cool. And the quick one, last one about management. How you become a manager? Like really, like you just like found a new position as a company. You were promoted. You just like forced to be a manager.
That's a good question. And like looking back, I don't really know. Like I was a manager in my retail days, but that was more just because of like when you're in retail, it's just whoever been there has been is the longest is kind of the manager. In my technical life, I think I just kind of fell into it. Like people started like that were hired after me kind of would come to me for advice and we would just talk about it, and like before I know it, I was kind of just managing, doing one-on-ones. And then, as I switch organizations that do have teams already done, there's structure that was already there, and just meeting with those people, talking with those people, having dialogues. I try to not put myself too high above the persons that are working for me in any way. Like I would just try to be like, hey, let's have conversations, like my team members, even at this company, are all very comfortable with me. They can say anything they want to say to me. And I think that that's super valuable, is when you establish that like dialogue from the beginning. It's powerful it goes a long ways. But for me, I can't really think about how like I became that. I just did become that. And I don't think of myself usually as a manager at the end of the day. Like I'll joke about it like in post, and like they know when I'm joking about it. But it just kind of happened to me, and I'm happy to continue going. And I have the personality for it. I have the patience for it. So that's just where we are.
Cool. So another great story. And so I know a lot of people who actually just feel the same. So for some reason, people start to come to them and say, oh, yeah, I have a question, etc., etc. And someone
Yep.
recognize it
It's
and
very
say,
organic
yeah.
that way. Yeah.
The worst experience when someone forced to be a manager, just like you see how the people struggle with this one. But
Yeah, they don't support their team because they don't want to be a manager. So they're not supporting their team's struggling. Team will come to questions and they'll be like, I don't know, what do you think you should do? I don't know. Or they're not even available. Like managers that aren't even available, that just like late to meetings, don't show up. Like you're showing your team that like you just don't care. And if you don't care, they don't care. So people show up to meetings and show up on time. It's really not that hard. It's actually your job. It actually is your job, believe it or not. So do it.
Yeah, I already hear a bit of your retirement plan. If you like target of the fraud prevention, so you're gonna be win the lottery. My expectation, but really, if you target tomorrow, you say no, it's enough fraud prevention. Yeah, hate it. We're going.
Yeah. So if I ever had to leave fraud prevention, hopefully it would be because I won the lottery. But more likely, it's going to be because Spotify calls me and writes me a big giant check for my podcast, the Joe Harris Experience, and I get to retire there, but just talk it to a microphone. I wouldn't mind. I think I could sacrifice an hour a week, talk it into a microphone, even in retirement, because I do enjoy this piece of it very much. But I don't know. Is on a longer, like a more serious note, I would hope that something that puts me into retirement is fraud prevention related, whether that be like my company IPOing or me starting a solution provider or joining a solution provider that's early stage. It's all up to be seen, but I would hope that like that would be the end game, so that I can enjoy a retirement saying this is the house that fraud prevention built. I think that would be most enjoyable, but I don't have any plans of slowing down or stopping anytime soon. I like what I do. I like my company. I like my podcast. So I'm just going to keep on keeping on until someone tells me I can't.
Good plan. I mean, it's better than mine because I don't have any plans right now.
Hey, that's what some of those times. That's when you fall into the best thing. Is like when you don't have the full scope outlined, is when the most opportunity comes to you. Like I think if people put themselves like with a short goal at the end, and they're so laser focused on that goal, they can miss some of the stuff that's happening around them. That might be an opportunity.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and I have last questions. Would you recommend actually fraud prevention part for anyone who still working here and want to escape, or for someone who looking for new opportunities in the market? And if you recommend, what's your advices be for this?
Yeah, for people that are just starting to dip their toe in, obviously, I think learn everything you can. Like your company might have a way of doing things, and there might be a piece of software to understand there are other ways of doing things, and there are other approaches and other software out there. So I think obviously do your job and do it well, and be looking a little beyond. I think like a lot of people just like, especially like people that are just do chargebacks all day, it could be monotonous, it could be boring, but be looking at ways that you can improve your process, or be looking at ways, identifying patterns that you're seeing in your chargebacks. And the same thing with fraud people, identifying better patterns, future patterns. Be looking at ways that you can improve processes for your workflow, and that will help you grow some career. I also think that people that like just learning, like I said, the education piece is something that we've been talking about all year on all these podcasts, all these conferences that we've been. And so there's a lot of education pieces out there. So if it's something that you're really interested in, learn. Do the MRC, learning the Rapid EDU stuff. There's a lot of new courses out there, like the Compelling Evidence 3.0 ones. Talk to your peers. Go to your regional mixers. Like a lot of companies host these, like Riskify just hosted one in LA a couple of months ago. I spoke at. Interface with other fraud people and just be open. Like one of the big things that we pride this group on is community, and there are people that come from the outside in that don't understand our community, like the people that tried to trademark the word fraud fighters the other day. They don't understand our community. They want the money from the community, but they don't understand the community. And we are a community of people that share. We talk about what we do. We talk about the patterns that we're seeing. We don't give away trade secrets, but we talk about we're getting hit for this group from Russia. We're getting hit for this group from China, and they're doing X. You don't necessarily always have to say we did this to solve it, but you sharing this information helps people understand where to look, and also helps people be validated that they're seeing those same things. And it goes a long ways, but just be a sponge, talk to everybody, listen to the podcast, all three of them that are in there. Sometimes there's a fourth one every once in a while that pops up, but listen to those, read the articles, read the stuff that like the vendors are putting out, these vendor reports, like Justice put out that chargeback report. I'm going to be doing an episode with them in the next couple of weeks. There's valuable information in there, and just learn. And if you have the passion, you'll feel it. If you don't have the passion, do your job until you find something else.
Really impressive answer, like the same as others. And actually, I want to say thank you so much for joining me today, because I was in the first place, I was a bit scared to send you a message, because I just if it's Jordan reply to me, he might reply, "Yeah, who are you? I don't know. Yeah, just like don't send me any messages anymore." Yeah, but
I listen. I know. I'm aware of all that's happening.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I try to be fair to everybody that reaches out to me, unless they're trying to sell me something. I'm very clear about how I feel about being sold items. So by all means, I'm happy that you did. I'm happy to come on your show, and thanks for having me on your show. I know that we do the same thing, but there's room enough in this space for both of these things to exist.
Yeah, and I encourage everyone who listened me today, please really looking after and subscribe for Fraud Boxers, because I found this really interesting. I'm usually listening podcasts when I travel somewhere or commute to the office. I found this is a brilliant time to listen something, and because I'm with my own and a lot of people around me, which I don't want to speak with them. So yeah, please have a look. I'm gonna leave the link to Fraud Boxers under the description of this episode. Everyone, feel free to jump in, and it's a lot of stuff to listen. It's a lot of episodes right now, and if you really don't know what to do on weekends, it's a great options to explore it. Yeah, and I usually say at the end of my podcast, this is my favorite word, which I ended all my episodes. Cut.
There we go.